Starting a fire without matches or a lighter should be impossible. Your fingers are numb from the cold. You've got no friction tools, no flint and steel, nothing from a camping store. Yet homeless people across frozen cities light fires every single night using nothing but garbage they pulled from dumpsters. They're not using fancy ferro rods, magnesium bars, or survival kits. What do they know that preppers with $200 fire starting kits don't? Here's the thing about fire in survival situations. All your waterproof matches, your butane lighters, your fancy fire starters, they fail when you need them most. Matches get wet, lighters run out of fuel. Ferro rods slip from frozen fingers. And when that happens at 20 degrees with darkness coming, you reefer hours from hypothermia, and your $50 emergency fire kit is worthless metal in your pocket. So what do people who actually live outside 365 days a year do differently? They start fires using trash. Not wilderness techniques that require dry wood and perfect conditions, but urban methods that work with wet materials, in the rain, using nothing but items you'd walk past on any city street. One guy showed me how he lights fires with steel wool and a dead battery. Takes 30 seconds, works in the snow, costs $0. Another veteran uses hand sanitizer and aluminum foil to create flames hot enough to boil water in under 2 minutes. The crazy part? These methods work better than most prepper techniques because they redesign for people who have nothing and can't afford failure. When your fire starting method assumes you own zero equipment and you're working with literal garbage in freezing rain, you figure out what actually works versus what just looks good in a YouTube tutorial. Right now, preppers are stockpiling waterproof matches and backup lighters, while homeless people are starting fires in conditions that would leave most survivalists freezing in the dark. That's not a gear gap, that's a knowledge gap, and tonight I'm closing it. Number 1. Steel wool and battery ignition. This is the most reliable urban fire starting method in existence, and it works in conditions that defeat every other technique. The physics is straightforward. Electricity flowing through steel wool creates resistance heat hot enough to ignite the steel fibers, creating sustained flame that'll light even damp tinder. Here's what you need: any battery with exposed terminals. A 9-volt works best, but A, C, or D cells work if you have to or more. Steel wool, the finer the grade the better, with 0,000 grade being optimal, but anything from grade 32000 works. You can find steel wool in hardware store dumpsters, janitorial supply trash, or construction site debris. The technique takes 10 seconds. Stretch a small amount of steel wool into a loose nest about the size of a golf ball. Touch both battery terminals to the steel wool simultaneously, creating a complete circuit. The wool ignites instantly, burning at over 700 degrees Fahrenheit. Drop your burning steel wool into a prepared tinder bundle and blow gently to spread flames. The advanced version uses a dead battery. Even batteries too weak to power devices still have enough juice to ignite steel wool. That dead 9-volt you threw away last month, still good for starting fires. Old car batteries that won't start your engine anymore, perfect for fire ignition. The current draw needed is minimal, meaning even nearly depleted batteries work. This method works in rain, snow, and wind because the steel wool ignites so hot that moisture doesn't matter. Homeless people who master this technique never worrying about fire starting again. One 9-volt battery and a handful of steel wool gives you 50 reliable fire starts, and both items are free in most urban environments. Number 2. Hand sanitizer and spark ignition. Alcohol-based hand sanitizer is liquid fire waiting to be lit, and it's everywhere in cities. Gas stations, public bathrooms, office buildings, all of them have dispensers you can access. The alcohol content, typically 60% to 70% ethanol, burns hot and fast even when diluted with water. The basic method requires hand sanitizer and any spark source. Pile hand sanitizer into a small mound on non-flammable surface or directly on your tinder bundle. Create a spark using a lighter with no fuel, a ferro rod if you have one, or even banging two rocks together. The fumes from the alcohol ignite before the spark even touches the liquid, creating instant flame. The technique that homeless people use takes this further. Mix hand sanitizer with shredded paper, dryer lint, or cotton fibers to create a paste. This mixture burns slower and hotter than pure liquid, giving you 3 to 5 minutes of sustained flame instead of 30 seconds of flash fire. 1 squirt of sanitizer mixed with a handful of lint becomes a fire starter that lines ignite wet wood. The advanced application is the delayed ignition method. Soak a cotton ball or paper towel in hand sanitizer, place it in your fire lay, and create your spark. The alcohol vapor ignites, the cotton sustains the burn, and you have flames without needing to maintain the initial ignition. This works in wind because the fuel is embedded in the fiber material rather than exposed as liquid. Hand sanitizer also works as an accelerant for difficult materials. Trying to burn green wood or wet cardboard, coat it with sanitizer first and it light. The alcohol burns off quickly but generates enough heat to dry and ignite the underlying fuel. 1 small bottle of hand sanitizer turns almost anything combustible into viable fire fuel. Number 3. Battery and gum wrapper technique. This method looks like magic, but it's pure physics, and it works with materials you can find on any city street. The technique uses the metallic backing on gum wrappers or candy wrappers to create a filament that heats and ignites when electricity flows through it. What you need is any battery, AA or larger, and a foil-backed paper wrapper from gum, candy bars, or cigarette packs. The wrapper must have paper on one side and metallic foil on the other. Cut the wrapper into a strip about 3 inches long and shape it like an hourglass, wide at both ends and narrow in the middle. The narrow section should be about 1/8 inch wide. Touch the wide ends of the wrapper to opposite battery terminals simultaneously. Electricity flows through the metallic foil, and the narrow middle section creates high resistance. That resistance generates heat concentrated in the thin area, and within 2 to 3 seconds the paper backing ignites. The flame is small but hot, enough to light prepared tinder. The key is getting the proportions right. Too wide in the middle and not enough resistance builds up, nothing happens. Too narrow and the foil melts before the paper ignites. Circuit breaks, no flame. The hourglass shape with a 1/8 inch waist is the sweet spot that works consistently. Homeless people refine this by preparing multiple wrappers in advance. Cut and shape 10 wrappers when you find them, store them flat, and you have instant ignition capability anytime you find a battery. Each attempt uses 1 wrapper, so having backups matters. The wrapper burns for maybe 5 seconds, which means your tinder needs to be ready and positioned perfectly. This method works with nearly dead batteries because the current draw is minimal. The wrapper creates such high resistance that even weak batteries generate enough heat. Old TV remote batteries, car key fob batteries, anything with metal terminals becomes a fire-starting tool. Number 4. Magnifying glass and solar ignition. This is the slowest method on the list, but it requires 0 consumables and works indefinitely. Any lens that focuses sunlight can generate enough concentrated heat to ignite tinder, and cities are full of discarded lenses. Reading glasses, magnifying glasses, camera lenses from broken phones, even clear plastic bottles filled with water work as focusing lenses. The technique requires direct sunlight, which limits its usefulness to clear days, but when conditions are right, solar ignition is completely reliable. The process is straightforward. Hold your lens to focus sunlight into the smallest possible point on dark-colored tinder. Char cloth works best, followed by punk wood, dry grass, or shredded paper. The focal point should be about the size of a pencil eraser, which generates temperatures over 400 degrees. Hold steady for 30 seconds to 2 minutes until your tinder begins smoking, then add gentle breath to create flame. The mistakes people make are using light-colored tinder that reflects instead of absorbing heat, moving the lens around instead of holding it perfectly steady, and giving up too soon. Solar ignition takes patience, but it works every time you maintain focus and wait for ignition temperature. Homeless people in sunny climates carry small magnifying glasses specifically for fire starting because it never runs out. One lens provides unlimited fires as long as the sun is shining. The limitation is weather dependence, which makes this a secondary method rather than primary, but when it works, it's completely free and infinitely renewable. The advanced technique uses water-filled containers as lenses. A clear plastic bag filled with water and shaped into a sphere focuses sunlight effectively. A glass bottle filled with water works the same way. This means even without a traditional lens, you can create solar ignition capability from trash. Number 5. Char cloth and flint substitute. Char cloth is partially burned cotton that ignites from a single spark and holds an ember indefinitely. Making it requires fire, which seems circular, but once you have char cloth, starting subsequent fires becomes trivially easy. Homeless people who maintain a char cloth supply can start fires faster than people with lighters. Creating char cloth requires a metal container with a small vent hole, cotton material, and an existing fire. Place cotton fabric or cotton balls in the container, seal it mostly but leave a small vent, and place it in hot coals for 10 to 15 minutes. Smoke vents from the hole as the cotton partially combusts in the low-oxygen environment. When smoke stops, remove the container and let it cool. Inside is blackened char cloth that catches sparks instantly. The fire-starting technique is simple. Place char cloth on a hard surface, strike a spark onto it using flint and steel or any spark-generating method, and the cloth catches and holds a glowing ember. Transfer the glowing char cloth to a tinder bundle, blow gently, and flames appear within seconds. The substitute for flint and steel that homeless people use is concrete and metal. Scrape a piece of carbon steel, a knife, file, or even a saw blade against rough concrete at a sharp angle. Sparks fly from the friction, landing on your char cloth and creating ignition. This works because concrete contains quartz and silicates that act like natural flint. Once you have char cloth, fire starting becomes a 30-second process. The cloth stays effective for months if kept dry, and making new batches is simple once you have the technique down. This turns fire starting from a skill-intensive challenge into a mechanical process anyone can execute. Number 6. Alcohol and cotton ball fire starters. This is the method that combines maximum burn time with minimal materials, and it's what experienced homeless people make in bulk when they find supplies. Cotton balls soaked in petroleum jelly, rubbing alcohol, or hand sanitizer become compact fire starters that burn for 3 to 5 minutes each, hot enough to ignite even damp wood. The basic version uses cotton balls and petroleum jelly. Take a cotton ball, coat it thoroughly with petroleum jelly until saturated but not dripping, and store in a plastic bag or container. When you need fire, pull out one cotton ball, pull apart the fibers to expose maximum surface area, and light with any flame or spark. The petroleum jelly burns slowly while the cotton fibers act as a wick, creating sustained flame. The alcohol version works faster but burns shorter. So cotton balls in rubbing alcohol or hand sanitizer, store in a sealed container to prevent evaporation and use when needed. These ignite instantly from a single spark and burn hot for 1 to 2 minutes, enough to establish fire in your main fuel. The homeless refinement is making hybrid starters. Coat a cotton ball with petroleum jelly, then just before use, add a few drops of hand sanitizer. The alcohol ignites instantly from a spark, and the petroleum jelly sustains the burn. You get instant ignition plus extended burn time in one package. Storage matters with these. Petroleum jelly cotton balls stay effective for years if kept in a sealed container. Alcohol-soaked versions lose potency as the alcohol evaporates, so they need tight sealing and should be used within weeks. Many homeless people prepare a mix, some petroleum jelly for long-term storage and some alcohol-based for immediate use. The material cost is negligible. A container of petroleum jelly costs $2 and makes 100 fire starters. Cotton balls are free from medical supply trash or dollar store purchases. Hand sanitizer and rubbing alcohol are available in public bathrooms. The knowledge of how to combine these materials into reliable fire starters is worth more than any commercial product. Number 7. Dryer lint and cardboard tube starters. Laundromats throw away pounds of dryer lint daily, and that lint is some of the most flammable material in urban environments. Combined with cardboard tubes from toilet paper or paper towels, it becomes a fire-starting system that works in nearly any conditions. The construction is simple. Stuff a cardboard tube tightly with dryer lint, packing it firmly so the lint doesn't fall out. For waterproofing, coat the outside with melted candle wax if available, though this is optional. The result is a fire starter that lights easily, burns hot, and sustains flame for 5 to 8 minutes. To use, light one end of the tube with any flame source or even a focused spark. The cardboard catches, the lint ignites, and you have sustained fire. Place the burning tube under your main fuel, and the extended burn time gives even damp wood time to dry and catch. The reason this works so well is material composition. Dryer lint is cotton and synthetic fibers that are already shredded and aerated, meaning maximum surface area for combustion. The cardboard provides structure and additional fuel. Together they create a burn time that exceeds most commercial fire starters. Homeless people make these in batches. Hit a laundromat, collect lint from every dryer, grab discarded toilet paper tubes from bathroom trash, and in 20 minutes you can build 15 to 20 fire starters. Each one is waterproof if wax-coated, compact enough to carry easily, and completely reliable. The variation that works in wet conditions uses petroleum jelly. Before stuffing the tube with lint, coat the inside of the cardboard with petroleum jelly. The wax coating on the outside prevents water from soaking the tube, the petroleum jelly inside provides sustained burn, and the lint ignites easily. This combination works even in heavy rain. Number 8. Sugar and chemical oxidizer ignition. This method requires specific materials that aren't always available, but when you have them, it creates fire from chemical reaction without needing external heat or sparks. The technique uses potassium permanganate, available from some first aid kits and water purification systems, combined with sugar or glycerin. Potassium permanganate is a strong oxidizer that reacts violently with combustible materials. Mix equal parts potassium permanganate powder and granulated sugar, grind them together slightly to increase contact points, and pile the mixture on non-flammable surface. Add a single drop of water or glycerin to the pile, step back, and within 10 to 20 seconds the mixture ignites spontaneously. The reaction generates temperatures over 1,000 degrees, hot enough to ignite essentially any fuel you place nearby. The flame is brief but intense, which means your tinder needs to be positioned immediately adjacent to the pile before you add the trigger drop. The materials are harder to find than the previous methods, which makes this a specialty technique rather than a primary method. Potassium permanganate appears in some survival kits, first aid supplies, and water treatment systems. Sugar is available anywhere. Glycerin can be found in hand lotions, soaps, and some medical supplies. Homeless people who know this technique keep small amounts of potassium permanganate stored carefully because it provides fire capability even when everything else is soaking wet. No sparks needed, no flame needed, just a chemical reaction that works regardless of weather. The safety consideration is important. Don't premix these materials. The friction from movement can cause spontaneous ignition. Store them separately and only combine immediately before use. The reaction is violent enough to cause burns if you're too close, so mix, step back, and let chemistry do the work. Number 9. Wire wool and electrical short circuit. This is the emergency method when you have electrical access but no other fire-starting materials. Any fine metal fiber, including steel wool, copper wire strands, or aluminum foil shredded into thin strips, will ignite when subjected to electrical current. The basic version uses building electrical outlets, twist fine wire into a bridge between hot and neutral terminals in an outlet, and the short circuit generates enough heat to ignite the wire. This is dangerous and should only be used in genuine survival situations where other methods have failed. The safer version uses car batteries or any high amperage power source. Touch fine wire wool or shredded foil to opposite battery terminals, creating a circuit that causes instant ignition. The metal heats, glows, and ignites any tinder placed in contact with it. Homeless people use this method in urban areas where they have access to power but no matches or lighters. It's not elegant, it's not the first choice, but it works when you need flame and have access to electricity. The critical safety rule is never attempting this with wall current unless you understand electrical systems and the risks involved. Short circuits can cause electrical fires, damage to buildings, and personal injury. This is strictly a last resort technique when hypothermia risk outweighs other dangers. Here's what this comes down to. Every fire starting method I just showed you works with materials you can find in any city within 20 minutes. No specialty gear, no expensive equipment, just trash and knowledge of how materials react. Preppers spend hundreds on magnesium bars, waterproof matches, and backup lighters, while homeless people start fires daily using dead batteries and steel wool. The difference isn't money, it's understanding what actually matters. Fire doesn't care about your budget or your brand name equipment. It cares about heat, fuel, and oxygen arranged correctly. These techniques work because they're tested daily by people who can't afford failure. When starting a fire is the difference between surviving the night and freezing to death, you figure out what's reliable versus what just looks impressive. No homeless person is starting fires with bow drills or hand drills. Those are wilderness techniques that require energy and conditions most urban environments don't provide. The methods I showed you work when you're exhausted, when your hands are numb, when materials are wet, when every commercial product has failed. They work because they use chemical energy and electrical energy instead of mechanical friction, and they work because the materials are everywhere once you know what to look for. You don't need to become homeless to learn these techniques, you need to test them. This weekend, collect the materials, try each method, and discover which ones work best for you. Figure out your mistakes when failure means starting over, not dying from cold. Modern survival culture sells the fantasy that the right gear makes you invincible. It doesn't. Knowledge makes you adaptable. A lighter works until it runs out of fuel. Understanding how to ignite steel wool with a battery works forever because the principle doesn't change and the materials are free. The materials are everywhere. The knowledge is right here. Your move, class dismissed.